In chapter 14, we're going to be talking about how we learn information and the different types of memories we have for learned information. Please excuse my voice. I am actually getting over a cold at the time of recording this. I had a really bad sinus infection last week and had totally lost my voice. So hopefully it won't be too bad during this recording this chapter. So very central to the process of learning and recalling is brain plasticity. Any experience that you engage in changes your brain. This is very, very fundamental. When you experience something, your experiences impact you. Anytime your experiences impact you, that results in some sort of subtle change in your brain. As you develop, your experiences impact you. Your experiences also impact you as a function of your culture. So you can have differences in your experiences that affect your brain that represent your cultural affinity, preferences that you have. Your experiences result in preferences. You're going to taste food. You're going to like it, dislike it. You're going to encounter people. You're going to take psychology classes. You will either prefer them or you don't. Hopefully you prefer your major of choice. Coping, anytime you experience something that is negative, high intensity, or even stuff that can be really positive, you're going to cope with your experiences, and in coping with your experiences, labeling, digesting them, all of these will result in or occur from your brain being plastic and highly adaptive. So this idea of your brain being plastic is known as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the nervous system's potential for physical or chemical change that enhances its adaptability. So what do I mean by adaptability? Any sort of physical or chemical change that enhances its adaptability, that means that you are enhancing your brain or your body's, you yourself's ability to function well in a particular context. So it is adaptive in some circumstances, may not necessarily be adaptive in others. When you do have this physical or chemical change that enhances your adaptability, that is the fundamental process of learning. When you learn something, your brain changes, and in learning, you acquire new information that enables you to be more responsive to your environment. The basic definition of learning is a change in an organism's behavior as a result of experience. And by a change in organism's behavior, this can be anything along the spectrum of behavior change. This can be a very basic behavior change from a neuron firing or being more likely to fire after an experience, hormones being released in greater number after experience, neurotransmitters being released more after an experience, to broader observable behaviors that would encompass emotional reactions, avoidance behavior, approach behavior, stuff like that. Now, a memory, how does that relate to learning? Memory is the ability to recall or recognize the previous experience. So while learning is a change in behavior as a result of experience, memory is recalling or recognizing that previous experience, and sometimes even knowing the effect that experience had on you or what you learned from it. So again, your body is constantly interacting with the world. It's constantly experiencing things. When you remember, you recall or recognize experiences that your body has undergone. When you recall or recognize these experiences, this is known as a memory trace. A memory trace is a mental representation of a previous experience. Memory traces can be weak, in which case you have a very sort of vague memory of a previous experience, or they can be very strong, such as increased memory for emotional or highly significant events in your life. A memory trace, this mental representation of a previous experiences, is presumed to correspond to some physical change in the brain. So now you can start to see how learning and memory are very intimately linked. Learning is this change behavior as a result of experience. So when you remember something, this should correspond to some physical change that has occurred in the brain as a result of what you learned from your previous experiences. Classical conditioning is the ultimate learning procedure. You should have covered this in Intro to Psych, but we'll also spend a little bit of time reviewing it here.
Psychologists have come up with new views, not only of animal behavior, but of human nature as well. And these views all concern a process that we take for granted, learning, because we are all truly born to learn. Ironically, one of the most important figures in the study of learning, Ivan Pavlov, wasn't concerned with the subject at all, at least not at first. Pavlov, a noted Russian scientist, won the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine in 1904. As this original footage shows, Pavlov was initially interested in digestion and the action of the salivary glands. By diverting the saliva of dogs into test tubes, he could precisely measure if and how much they salivated during digestion. When food was presented, the dog salivated quickly, an inherited salivary reflex. But over repeated testings, a strange thing happened. The dog salivated before contact with the food. Just the sight of the food was enough to stimulate their drooling. Then, just seeing the food dish, or even hearing the footsteps of Pavlov or his assistants, was enough to trigger this built-in reflex. What was going on to elicit this response? Pavlov decided to find out by systematically varying the stimuli and measuring the dog's reaction. Metronomes, lights, and bells were all used as stimuli, and they all worked as stand-ins for the food. What mattered was not the kind of stimulus that was used, but the fact that it reliably signaled that food was on the way. Pavlov had discovered a fundamental type of learning called classical conditioning. An original stimulus elicits an automatic unlearned response. Both stimulus and response happen naturally. They are unconditioned. Then a second, neutral stimulus that never elicits the unconditioned response by itself is introduced just before the presentation of the original stimulus. If the neutral or signaling stimulus is presented alone, and a response occurs as if the original stimulus were still there, we say that conditioning has taken place. The arbitrary neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus. The reverse is also true. Pavlov and others studied the extinction over time of such conditioned responses. When the subject learns that the conditioned stimulus no longer signals a desired event, the acquisition process is reversed, as the learned connection is gradually weakened. Pavlov's work, and the work of those who followed him, led to a remarkable conclusion, and that is, any stimulus an organism can perceive is capable of eliciting any reaction the organism is capable of making. This means that virtually any sound, sight, or smell can influence the way our muscles tense or relax, our moods fluctuate, or even the way our attitudes are formed. For instance, if I say, relax, and then do this, you're going to be startled and upset. After 5 or 6 pairings of relax, just saying the word relax is going to generate a negative response rather than its usual learned reaction.
So I thought that was a really nice review video. So let's talk a little bit more about the stimuli-response relationship that is part of classical conditioning. An unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus that unconditionally or naturally automatically triggers a response. So this unconditioned stimulus could be anything that you typically react to. It could be food, it could be an attractive person of the opposite sex, it could be things that you like or things that you dislike. It could be pain, it could be pleasure, An unconditioned response in classical conditioning is the unlearned, naturally occurring response to the unconditioned stimulus. For food, this would be salivation. Other types of responses could include emotional reactions, the experience of pleasure, the experience of pain. So if you were to step on a Lego, that would be a painful stimulus, and your response would be the experience of pain and that you might have your kids clean up your Legos more often. Conditioned stimulus is an originally neutral stimulus that, after association with an unconditioned stimulus, triggers a conditioned reaction. So this, importantly, is something that should start relatively neutral. And a conditioned response is the learned response to a formerly neutral conditioned stimulus. Right now we're going to watch a couple of videos that demonstrate classical conditioning in action. Here we have our first video. I think this is a fun video because it demonstrates how quickly classical conditioning can occur and how it can also occur in pretty unique contexts.
Good luck catching one. There's a watermelon in the sky.
There ain't no stopping, yes. It's on and popping, yes. The party's starting, yes. The cutie's shocking, yes. And there ain't no stopping.
That was so
when this happens? Well, the weather is clouds and precipitation on windward slopes.
There's a giraffe in the sky.
I should get that breathalyzer out today, huh? Brandon?
12:16.
Lucas?
12:15.
Justin?
10 and 14.
Tyler?
Emery can fly.
Just make that up.
No.
Is there a script to this? And we can't tell that they're thousands of feet away. Okay? And then
Watermelon in the sky.
yeah. All right, so
So I thought that was a fun example because here you have just a couple of instances, and when the stimuli and the relationship is actually much more relevant, classical conditioning can occur with even just one experience. So I thought the high school example was pretty funny because to actually get 8 out of 22 people to look after just a couple of instances, and that doesn't even include the people that are looking at the person that was uttering the phrases. If you included those, it'd probably be close to 50%. So if you can have this sort of trained reaction in 50% of the people in a short period of time, then you can imagine how this could be happening on a more subtle, daily level, resulting in very, very pervasive learned associations. And here's another fun example.
Ow! The heck? Stop it! Ellie, stop! Get out of my room! Hi, Mom.
So again, I thought those were pretty fun examples. The brother and sister classical conditioning experiment, that was definitely one that I have experience with watching with my own children, how quickly they condition each other. If one says they'll do a particular thing and they figure out sometimes that they don't, then they will then extend that to other types of things. You know, she promised she would help me, but she never does, so I'm not going to promise to help her. You know, that type of interaction of what type of people are there for you, whether people live up to promises, whether people support you, all these types of things that you wouldn't actually equate with classical conditioning really do relate to classical conditioning. Another example of how pervasive classical conditioning is our relationship with our pets. We, of course, try to train our pets, but very, very often our pets are actually more successful at training us in terms of doing all sorts of little things to get affection when they're not supposed to beg at the table, all sorts of little things.